Hello and welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 116. Right off the bat, want to make sure that everyone's ready with the questions because we're not going to do a sound test. Got away with it last week. It worked really well. Didn't have to do a sound test, so we ain't going to do a sound test. But I am going to have a little glance into the live chat, and if no one can hear me, then I can pick it up pretty early without doing 20 minutes of talking to myself in an empty room. As always, if you've got a question, those lucky enough to join us in the live chat, just pop a question mark at the end. Makes it a lot easier for us to find those questions and answer them quickly. There is a Q&A part of this broadcast later on, but answers can come thick and fast right away if our friend and teammate Zach can find an answer for you and provide that right away. Any questions that don't get immediate answers, Zach will remember and then repost them during the Q&A so I can answer them in order. The sooner you can get your question in, the more likely you are to get an answer. It's always and often the case that in a broadcast someone asks a question on minute 29 of a 30-minute broadcast, and yeah, we can't really get to every single question. So the sooner you can ask one, the better. And like last week, this will be a slightly extended Q&A because we're still very much in the thick of it when it comes to doing our DirectX 12 conversion and Wicked Engine merge. So whilst that's going on, we don't have lots of shiny toys to show. So I'll show you a little bit of everything, but generally I give a little bit more time to some questions and maybe get a few more answers out in this week's broadcast. So let's start off with classic news. We are planning a bug fixes update, so that should happen in the next week or two. At the moment we have 12 bugs, 12 confirmed or most likely confirmed bugs that we're going to have a look at and fix as many as possible. But some other questions did pop up and was highlighted to me from the community, and I just wanted to readdress it, which is the subject of the multiplayer issue. Now, multiplayer works in GameGuru Classic, but it only works if you use stock media. If you use your own assets, custom assets, stuff you've created yourself and brought in, and then make that level and share it in multiplayer, that level isn't picked up because there's a bit of weird issue going on with the Steam API and the Workshop API, and something was updated and our code didn't keep up with it, and there's a little bit of a flaw there. Now, we had two choices. We can either fix it and upgrade to the latest Steam API, or we use code we've already got. We have a parallel product called VRQuest, which actually had to use a non-Steam version of the multiplayer, and so we chose Photon, very respected multiplayer API, and we already have the code. In fact, if you go onto the GitHub, GameGuru Classic repository, GameGuru repo, GameGuru code, SDK, you'll actually find Photon SDK. It actually has everything that we need, not only to conduct multiplayer gaming for Classic, but also it shows custom levels. It uses a nice little piece of software which takes your FPM, uploads a temporary version of it to a server. Everyone can download that level, sync, start playing the game, and the temporary file is thrown away by the host when the game ends. Super nice, super simple, and we've already written it. Now, the reason why you're not getting it, aside from the fact we are actually doing quite a lot at the moment on the Mac side, is we're going to add this at some point to Macs. And so we want to get this code cleaned up in such a way that once we've made sure that the server's correct and everything is up to date and it all works again, to drop this into GameGuru Classic. So that's the plan. We're not going to fix some old multiplayer. We're going to bring across a shinier, newer, better multiplayer in the form of the Photon SDK, and that will be the fix for the multiplayer bug. The fix is an entirely new API. And the reason it's a good idea, it sounds like we've gone all the way around the houses, is you won't need Steam installed to play multiplayer. A request that's been in the Classic community forever. So when you've made a game, and your game is a multiplayer game, and you share it with your friends don't need Steam, and don't need to own GameGuru Classic in order to play that multiplayer game. That is effectively the upshot of using Photon. So I'm looking forward to announcing more news on that in the future. And another question that came through the community is, how exactly do I get involved with this GitHub GameGuru Classic repository, and how do I get started? Well, it's quite an in-depth subject. You kind of to some degree, you already have to know it. You already have to know C++ and GitHub and syncing and source code control and all that kind of stuff. But let me give you a really quick introduction. So if you go into GitHub, GameGuru Classic, GameGuru repo, you'll see this homepage. And right now it's pretty brief. All it's basically doing is telling you to get Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition. And I've managed to find that on here. It's still available from Microsoft. You just go to older versions, 2017, here's a download, big download. Install that, it installs all the dependencies for you, and then you've got a development environment set up. Once you've done that, you can come back to the GitHub repository, and from GitHub itself, you'll download something called the Github Desktop, my recommendation for your offline source code control software. Once you've got the Github Desktop, then you go to the code, big green button, and you'll see this. This is the address to this repository. And when you install GitHub Desktop and clone a repository, it will ask for that. Now, on GitHub Desktop, if you log into your own GitHub account and you've added this to your own profile, it would show up automatically. That's why I like GitHub Desktop. It does try and make things as easy as possible for you. And if you have been installed, you just click this button. Pardon me. I've got a frog. Sorry. I usually have a glass of water or a glass of milk. Just looked and there's no cups. So I'm just going to have to choke to death live. Okay, so yeah, you drop that into your GitHub Desktop configuration. It takes a while to download all the files. Once you've done that, it's already set up for Visual Studio 2017. So as soon as you double click the SLN file, it will automatically boot up Visual Studio, then you press build, and then it compiles your executable. Once you've got your executable, you drop it right into either your Steam folder or a non folder, and then you can run GameGuru Classic as normal, and you're running under your executable that you created yourself. Now, I could, yes, spend the next 2 hours talking about the whole business of setting it up and running. I just wanted to give you a starting point. What I've literally just described gets you an executable, and from that point, any change you make to this source code through Visual Studio is reflected in the GameGuru Classic version that you will have. But it will only be yours. You know, maybe it goes without saying, but changes you make and your executable, and you run your executable, it's only on your computer. It's not going to affect everybody else's versions of GameGuru Classic. And the reason I mention that is if you are getting behind changing the source code and you're adding features and functions that you think are pretty cool and the rest of the community would like to see, you can actually create branches and you can make commits. And we can test those commits, we can review them, and if we like them, we can drop them into a future official build of GameGuru Classic, which is the ultimate aim of opening up the source code. It's not open source, we're just making the source code available because there's people out there who are very good and very eager to contribute, and once they've made that contribution, everybody benefits. As exampled by Preben and Sab in Essence, 2 great contributors to GameGuru Classic repository. So I just wanted to give you that starting point. If you like this and you want me to go even deeper into what are the next stages, maybe even to demonstrate, and you know, downloading, compiling, dropping an executable in, running GameGuru Classic. If you want to see that, please post in the live chat or in the comments once this eventually gets to YouTube. So that's for GameGuru Classic. Let's check out GameGuru Max. Okay, GameGuru Max fans, we have the demo for you. Now, this is very last minute, because as I said, we're very deep in the DX12 wires hanging out everywhere. We know it's a good idea, the merge is worth it. It's just we're breaking lots of things in the process of making it better. But we are a team, and we can run stuff in parallel. And so what I want to show you is this. I'm just going to a new level. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet. So this is a level from our storyboard. Click it. I'm going to click Snow. I'm going to here. Give it just any old name. Lee 42. Why not? And we're in a nice little snowy scene. You don't know what I'm going to say, don't you? You don't know what I'm going to show you. Right, let me give you the backstory. I've mentioned it in a few broadcasts before. We are working on, in the background, you haven't seen a lot of it because we're not ready to show a lot of it yet, something called the building editor. It does what it says on the tin. It lets you edit buildings. It lets you create buildings. And we'd finished it. It could make and export buildings, and it was really easy. It even pre-populated the buildings with lights and working doors. And it worked great. And then we got together a couple of testers and said, is this ready for everyone? Is this ready to release? And almost unanimously, the feedback came back, yeah, it's great, but I can't change the textures. You give us 16 of those textures, those are the textures we've got, we can't change them. So all our buildings are going to be using the same walls, the same floors, the same ceilings. And obviously, given 5 minutes of actual thought, completely correct feedback, we thought, we can't release this without creating custom textures. And so that's what we did. The building editor, and I'm happy to be able to demonstrate it in the weeks to come, not the months, the weeks to come, will let you have custom textures. Have your own texture bank and map floors, walls, ceilings with your own textures. And it's really great fun. It really is transformative to what we had before custom textures. And then we sent that back to the testers, and the tester came back and said, no, it's not fair that you have a building editor that lets you have custom textures, and all of GameGuru Max where you don't have custom textures. So that is unacceptable. And so we put a hiatus on the building editor progress and switched development work to adding what I want to show you now. Wow, that was a hell of an introduction. But you've probably guessed what it is I'm about to demonstrate. This is our terrain. This is our terrain editing mode. This is our paint mode within that. And these are the textures you're currently used to. 31 texture to choose from, including the blank one. And that was fixed. But some eagle-eyed amongst you have probably noticed 2 new buttons. This is going to be in the next big build. As I said, we're going to get through all of the DX12 work and the Wicked merge. But after that, we're going to drop this in, but it will run under DX12 instead of what you're seeing, which is a sort of offshoot DirectX 11, just to demonstrate this. And you've got 2 buttons, change texture format. Change texture folder and reset texture settings. And what it would allow you to do is, if you do have a lot of textures that you want to have in your terrain instead of the ones that we've chosen for you, you can change the texture folder. So I'm going to select this button. I've already pre-prepared a folder called My Custom Textures, and I'm going to click OK. And now it's replaced the default textures with this set of textures. And I have sort of cheated and just nicked all of the textures from the out of the box and just added, you know, the carpet texture here, which is actually from somewhere else in GameGuru Max, but it's now inside the terrain texture choices. Now, what happened here but you didn't see, or at least what is going to be in the released build, final and tested version, is the terrain textures require a very special set of DXT formats. It needs BC7 for the albedo. It needs, I think it's BC5 for normal and BC1 for surface single channel data, or something like that. Suffice to say, you can't just grab any old image off the internet and just drop it straight into our system. So our system will auto-convert your textures that you have in your texture folder into the appropriate format, do all the refreshing, and then drop you back into your level editor where you can do this. So now I actually have a terrain and I can just paint carpet. Completely inappropriate, but I wanted something a little bit dramatic to show you what I'm talking about. You now have control over all of the terrain textures in your world, and it uses the very clever terrain texture system. It goes blah, blah, blah. And so if you changed all of these, and you can actually in the version 1 implementation, you will have control over which texture goes in which slot. More on that probably through a nice little guide to show you how you prepare your texture folders. You can actually change all the textures for each of the biomes. You can either choose to use some of our textures that you like the look of and just change a few, or change them all, or change just one, like I've done here. It's been a long awaited, ever since we released in March, everyone's been wanting this, and you can thank our inner circle of testers who demanded that this feature be added to terrain textures before we release any more tidbits on the building editor, which already also has the ability to change texture folders, and so you can have all your own textures for sci-fi buildings, or World War II buildings, or Wild West buildings, or alien buildings or whatever it is you want. You've now got control and create your own textures and drop them in a texture folder. Happy days. And if you don't like all this, reset texture settings, and then you're back where you started. As I said, this is a development build. When you click that, that carpet no longer exists, so why are you seeing it here? Well, this is cached. If I go here and come back and paint with that, it's the way terrain can be rendered really fast. This is actually now sitting in a cache, and it doesn't have to keep pulling from the source texture whilst it sits in that cache. It's called virtual texturing. But yeah, once you click that, we'll actually have a refresh of the cache, and you'll see it go all the way from where the camera is all the way off into the distance. But yes, you can actually pull back to the original ones anytime you want. And also what's going to happen is this texture folder will be remembered per level. So each level can have its own texture folder configuration. By default, of course, it will give you the default one. And I must also stress this is a version 1 implementation that does texture folders en masse. Eventually, version 2 design will let you select individual textures and swap them out. It's a little bit more involved, and there's some more management that would have to happen in order to make sure all these individual bespoke changes are remembered in an efficient way. But that's our version 2 design. For version 1, we kind of want to get the building editor into your hands, but we also wanted to have a big thumbs up from anyone who's tested it so far, and this was the price of that thumbs up, to add custom terrain textures into the next build of GameGuru Max. And also, to some degree, you see this selection of grasses. A very similar dilemma. They're basically just textures with a nice little alpha to clip out the bits that aren't being rendered to the screen. So another part of the version 1 implementation is, again, at the bottom of this. Currently it's more than a 4x4 grid, it's going on and on and on. But we're going to reduce this scroller to a 4x4, and again, change grass folder and reset grass choices. That way, not only you can change the terrain textures, you can also change the foliage and the low-lying detail that sits on top of it. Because very often, the floor texture and then the grasses and mosses and other things that populate on top of it kind of need to go hand in hand. An artist who wants full control will want both of those things. Trees was discussed, but it goes a little bit further. To do trees, you'd need to be a modeler. You'd need to understand how to create a tree and LODs of that tree, and then the quad that's rendered in the distance that looks like the tree from multiple angles and correctly lighted. That was a little bit too much for a quick version 1, so that's going to be left out. But certainly paint and highly likely grass will make it into the next build. So you got the starting point to be able to do more customization with GameGuru Max. So that was my, in quotes, short demo. I'm not sure this is going to end up as an extended Q&A, guys and gals, because we're already 90 minutes in and I ain't even finished. So let's see if we can get through a little bit more, which is this part. Anyone who wants to know more news and don't want to keep waiting a whole week before a broadcast or reading something that we've posted on the socials or on the newsletter can come here. Now, what is this? This is public. It's one of our repos that we forked from the original Wicked engine. So this is a fork that you can see it comes from here, and this is our version of it. And we commit changes. As we work, we commit, because it's a great cloud-based backup. If we lose all our hard drives, all our hard work stays here. But the benefit of that is you get to see it happening. Don't try and download this and compile. It won't compile. But what it does allow you to do is see our little comments as we're going through. So anything with my little mug on it is stuff that I've done. And Janos is posted in here. So that's all his stuff. And of course other contributors to the Wicked engine endeavour. But these are ours, well, rather mine. And if that's not sufficient, you want to know a little bit more, click on this thing here. That is the commit itself. And it shows all the files that have been added, deleted or changed. And then it gives you a big rundown of every little change. The before and after. The before and after. And anyone who wants to study this can do that at their leisure. But effectively what the job is to make sure that when we compile a million lines of GameGuru Max source code, that it still works with the latest version of the Wicked engine. The last version of the repo that we forked was about 14 to 15 months ago, and a lot has changed since then. The DirectX 12 was relatively minor. Upgrading all of our source code to work with the latest version of the Wicked Engine repo, that's the one that's taking all the time. And the reason it's taking a bit longer than if we just hacked it all in and got it running is this time we don't want to do a lot of hacking. What we want to do is be able to continually and regularly sync with the latest version of the Wicked Engine. And so we're getting it in bits and pieces instead of every 15 months, so we have to do wholesale changes. And one of the things that involves is making sure that when we do a change to the Wicked Engine, it's done sympathetically. So it adds to the Wicked engine rather than wholesale changing it or hacking little bits into it. The good news is we are now compiling. So everything that we had is now compiling, and everything is linking. So the libs are linking. The thing that's remaining, the last thing, is this. Shaders. GameGuru Max has 70 custom shaders, and it's the old way of doing things. The idea of texture 2D array, register, T. Just to anyone who doesn't know shaders, it's sort of looking in slot 50 for this particular grass texture, and then it goes off and uses it. And the new version looks like that. So using this, which is registered in something called a root signature, and as you can see, there's other small changes as well. And it's a case of getting rid of that and converting it to that and making sure that it fits in with the way Wicked Engine works right now. That's an old way as well. Now we could just convert it all line by line, but with 70 shaders and a lot of interesting stuff going on, for example this and this was the old custom shader, which you see is using a G buffer. But in the new stuff, and this was just pasted in from the latest Wicked Engine shader, it doesn't use the G buffer, it just outputs a float 4. So wholesale changes to the way our old custom shaders work and all of the new shaders in the Wicked Engine. And so we're getting to the point now we're thinking, you know what, this is probably not the cleverest way, because we're going to have to keep doing it every time we sync to a major change in the Wicked repo. So the solution, so far, still in the dilemma stage, is this. Instead of all of that shader that you saw, at least for the pixel shader, it'll look like that. Now what is that? Well, that's basically asking the system all of the features that we want. These are all the features that we want from the Wicked Engine. So you set these defines up, and then you run that. And what that basically does, it creates the pixel shader's main function and includes only the bits that you actually need. That is a lot cleaner than that. And it also means there isn't any hack code. It's essentially just choosing what you want. Usually it's based on how much performance you want to lose by all the features you're switching on. And then because it actually links to this, the object hf.hlsli, this is maintained by the Wicked Engine, not by us. So if there were any changes, it all happens inside here. And so providing we just stick to the rules of doing these defines, then even our custom shaders will be up to date when we do a sync with the latest version of the Wicked Engine. So let us crawl back out of the hole we've just dug for ourselves, and that was an introduction into really deep C++, shaders, HLSL, and all those sorts of good things. I just wanted to show you that we're not waxing lyrical. There's really deep down, dark, serious merging going on, and we're at the third stage. We've done C compiling, we've done linking, we're now going through all the shaders. And when we've got our HLSL 6 shader blobs, when we next press the run button and run the executable, we should start seeing stuff rendered to the screen. And then again, it's just piecing together all of the bits that we hacked in, but then replaced with something that either already in the Wicked Engine, or we do it in such a way that syncing is a nice, easy process moving forwards. So that's what's going on in GameGuru Maxland. Not too worried about DX12, but doing a lot on what we are calling the Wicked merge to get everything working. So my guess is next Wednesday and the next broadcast I will be able to show you something running. We're that close. Unless something else trips me up, we're really, really that close to seeing the latest, greatest version. And anyone who's really eagle-eyed, staring at this screen for a while, like POM, anyone know what that is? We looked at it a couple of weeks ago in previous broadcasts. No? Parallax occlusion mapping? Yep, that's right. It's already built into the Wicked Engine. All we need to do is switch it on, supply it with the correct textures, and you're going to have lovely undulating poppy surfaces instead of flat surfaces but that's not on our short term roadmap. Just want to get it all running again. Just want to hint that Wicked Engine has a lot of really cool things that we can switch on when the time is right. So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions been building up, so without further ado, let's crack on and see if there's any worthy questions for old Lee. Okay, so let's see if we've got a live chat. We do, but I'm going to pop it out and I'm going to drag it into the main screen. The reason is we haven't really shown the Q&As, all the text that goes on. Can't find the button, people. I'm sure there is a really cool button for it, but these are all questions for our live chat. Zach has preempted, thank you very much. I do look for the orange, because the orange means this is probably the first question that was asked in our live chat today and didn't have an answer. So I'm happy to provide the first question with the first answer. And the question is, I'm working on a game that requires to the player to jump from a moving platform to moving platform. Could you demo the moving platform behavior? Go back to one of the first broadcasts. I think it was about 4 broadcasts ago, and it was about behaviors. I think there's 2 broadcasts that have a title behavior in the title. Go watch both of those, and I actually show you how to, well, actually show you the platform, the moving platform being demonstrated. Now that one goes up and down, but you can change the behavior to move in different directions. So go check that out. And the reason I'm sort of not necessarily fobbing you off, but giving you that was already done in several processes ago, is that I've looked at the clock and literally, if this was a 30-minute broadcast, we've got 1 minute for our extended Q&A, which is, it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? And I've just seen like 5 more questions. So let's see if we can rattle through. And I apologise. Yes, if we had loads and loads and loads of time, I'd absolutely do a demo for you. So if you go to those previous broadcasts, you're not happy, come back next week, post it. I'll make sure that we do have time for more questions. We do a little demo on that. Hopefully running in DX12 with the latest version of the Wicked Engine. Next question. Why do you seemingly have 3 GameGuru Maxes on your taskbar? Great question. This one is my internal DX12 Wicked merge. That's totally broken. This one is the official Steam version, the public Steam version that works, in case I need to do demonstrations on the fly. And this one is the one I was just showing you, the DX11 off branch, showing the custom textures in the version of GameGuru Max. Once this broadcast is over, I'm getting rid of that one so I don't get confused. Once I've got DX12 and Wicked Merge done, I will get rid of that one and I'll be back to 1. So that's why I've got 3. Only I know the order in which they are presented. Third question. What is your goal with GameGuru other than everyone make a game? To live long and prosper, I suppose. The overall goal of GameGuru is very much that, to allow everyone to make a game. That's, you know, there's no noble goal here. Obviously, we've been doing game makers for forever. And I could go a little bit further and say, you know, if you start making games and you really enjoy it and you're really good at it, and you are so inclined, you could make a career out of it. So you could say the ultimate goal is to create the next generations of game developer. But that's probably a little bit of a stretch. It has happened. I have sort of indirectly been responsible for people joining the games industry and making it their career, and hopefully most of them haven't regretted that decision. But for the most part, for the most people who look at GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max, it's I want to make a game and I don't want to spend 3 years learning programming. Maybe down the road, yes, but right now I just want to see if game making is fun. Some people enjoy it, some people hate it. It's kind of like Marmite. So that's all it is. You know, we're making game making easier for more people. Okay, here's another question. Will we ever get a bigger editable area, like 10 to 20 kilometers? Because 5 kilometers isn't that big. Well, in terms of planetary scale, yeah, 5 millimeters is tiny. Imagine the gravity that you get from a planet that only has 5 kilometers from end to end, walking in one direction. Yeah, it'd be titchy. But in compared to GameGuru Classic, it's monstrous. And when you get to the end of your 5 kilometers, we have procedural terrain that kicks in that continues to render that terrain off ad infinitum. And I would challenge anyone who thinks 5 kilometers is just too small to fill up 5 kilometers to each of the 4 corners and then give me that FPM. And when you give me that FPM, I'll hold my hands up and say, right, I'll make it 20 kilometers. But really, that's being pedantic. I know what you mean. You want a level where you can have a village and then a long road and then another city and then another long road in the same direction. And you want to do it like that. And right now you have this sort of procedural wall. The reason that's there is for just managing resources. Down the road, there isn't really any reason why we can't introduce something called streaming, terrain streaming. Well, when you get far away from some area that is currently in memory, you can drop that from memory and stream in some new stuff. With a little bit of jiggery pokery with the camera center position, you can keep walking in the same direction for as long as your computer has power. But right now it's limited because we want to control resources. Most games do this, or most games do a hack to make you think you have massive maps. But yeah, we're going to use the same trick that a lot of the modern AAA engines do eventually, which is streaming in data as required. You really can't hold 20 kilometers of a massive game all at once. No one really does that, especially if you're developing a title that eventually needs to be on a console, which has phenomenally hideous memory constraints and restrictions. Okay, another question. Will we see VR implemented in GameGuru Max before the end of the year? What shall I say, Lee? Say yes. Yes. Seriously, once I've got DX12 absolutely wrapped up on NVIDIA and AMD and Intel, and I've got the latest Wicked engine humming along nicely, and I have proved that I have a performance gain by hook or by crook or by upscaling, I'm going to switch on VR. I want to switch my VR mode on. I want to get all my 8 headsets tested on it and then get it an EXP build so other people can stick their headsets on and run around the levels they've been making. I'm not saying it'll be finished for the end of the year. What I am saying is there will be a build that you'll be able to get from us and you'll be able to put your headset on and run around a little bit in VR. I think that's likely. I think that's very, very likely. However, there are a lot of obstacles keep throwing themselves in my face and keep slowing me down at every turn. Yeah, it might be a tricky one. But because I know where I am generally in the port process, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to switching on VR, testing out OpenXR compatibility with the latest version of the Wicked engine. And it's probably likely that the front-end stuff, the screen editor, the customization, the inventories, the controls, you know, the VR controls where the controllers don't look like controllers anymore, they actually look like sticks and guns and axes and stuff, that will probably go into next year. But certainly having to play with VR, yeah, I think you're going to get a nice little Christmas present. But don't quote me on that. All right, another question. Are there going to be help files that deal with the import requirements for textures and perhaps models as well? Yeah, we've already started making guides. You just have to go and find the guides folder in the GameGuru Max root folder, and that's our starting point. If you feel that there is a guide missing, or there is a guide but it doesn't have enough details, please let us know through the socials, and we will make notes, probably even add them to the guide. So we'll actually start creating some headers to say, you know, here's a header, here's a couple of sentences to start it off, and then you let us know how much detail you're going to need in each section. We're not here to make volumes and volumes and volumes of manuals, but we do want to give you enough information to get you over the hurdles that might be a bit mysterious, so you can crack on and create stuff and add it to GameGuru Max. So we have started some guides. I do know that we have a guide on models, how to bring in a model or to make it into an object and put it into GameGuru Max. That does mention textures and the naming conventions that we use, but if you want something more dedicated, let us know. So those are all the questions that were asked whilst I was ranting on about GitHub, etc. And now let's see if there's any questions from people who are answering them after Zach flooded the live chat. Okay, so this is from Christy Man. Will you ever add better boats just with lower and raising sails than when you add boats that react to water? No, I don't think so. Not in the short term and not before version 1. We do have a boat, but that was really just to demonstrate one of the boat behaviors, which is the game logic for boats. But it's very basic. It lets you run up to an object that might be a boat, go in it, and then that object, whatever it is, can move forward, it can turn left and right, and then you can get off it. That's basically all the behavior does. But that could be anything. That could just be any kind of vehicular assist. It just happens to be in the shape of a boat for that example that we provided. There is no plans to do a full-on water simulator with ships simulator and boat simulator with real sails with cloth physics. All of that's really cool stuff. It would fit into what I would call a vehicle project. We'll do all kinds of vehicles, but it's definitely after version 1. Right now, and I know if you're new to the broadcast, V1 right now, there's already a lot in it, but what we're still waiting on is finishing off the DX12 stuff, adding the VR, adding RPG, adding puzzle, adding performance and stability. Those are the pillars that remain to be erected. Once all of them are done, and a few other bits and pieces around the outside, that's what we're calling version 1. And until those are done, we're not really looking at distracting ourselves with a whole new feature line. After version 1, all bets are off, and we'll just see what the community wants us to do next, whether work on existing stuff or add some new stuff. And if that new stuff is, please give us vehicles of every sort, then that's what we do. Okay, here's a question from Tam51. Will you be adding Xbox controllers to GameGuru Max? Yes, I do have a variety of controllers, including an Xbox and a non-brand controller, and I think I have an old PlayStation 3 controller. I think even that can plug in. And the reason it's not been done yet is I held off on it until we was doing the VR controllers. I know controllers that come with VR are completely different, nothing to do with your, what I would call a console controller, a gamepad. But it's all in the same area of code. And if we're going to support controllers, let's just do it properly, where you can remap all the buttons and keys to different actions. So it's all kind of the same piece of work, so we're doing it all around the same time. So that's when it'll happen. Once you see the front end stuff being talked about, that's when you should start really pushing and say, I want my Xbox controller in sooner rather than later, and it isn't a huge job. And to be honest, there is already some code in there that kind of does that. In fact, yeah, go into setup.ini and look for I think it's called the Xbox, and set it to 1 and see what happens with your game. It may already be in there. But yes, we're certainly going to give it an overhaul and make key remapping a lot easier. Here's a question from 3Com. I need to resize my Stargate particle. Okay, and remove it when done via Lua. Any chance to do it? Resize. I suppose that question is, can I change the parameters of the particle system? If the particle system is the one that's controlling the size, can you change that? At the moment, no. The size is fixed when you create it in the particle editor tool, and then you import it, and all them parameters are kind of fixed, and then you can play that out. In the editor, you can change the size to some degree and the direction, or maybe you can't change the size. That's a good question. But yeah, let me know why you want to change the size. Because if you want to change the size, you might want to change the direction. You might want to change the colour. Then you want to change the speed and the opacity. And then you may as well say, can we change literally everything? And then just throw away the tool. So I'd like to know some use cases as to the importance of that. And then, yeah, if there's a really good, strong case for it, we can add it to the issues board. Perhaps even set it to a high priority. Because it's not a huge job. But, let's do things because it's a good idea and a lot of people can use it. Here's a question. Working on a customer character AI. You've got customers with the behavior editor. Oh, well done. Is it possible to change a character's speed without changing the character's animation speed? Yes, there is actually. There are 2 speeds, as you say. In fact, there are multiple different speeds. There's turn speed, animation speed, move speed. There are all the Lua commands are available to change all those different things. If you found one of those commands and you use it and it doesn't do what you think it should do, let me know. Because that's probably a bug, and we'll put it in the issues board as a bug and we'll get it fixed, because that is one that definitely does need to be fixed sooner rather than later. If you mean that when using the behavior editor, all our little drop-down commands for actions and conditions, and there literally isn't a command, an action for changing that speed, then that's just an omission. That set of commands is much smaller than the command you get when you're actually scripting at the lowest level. The behavior editor abstracts a lot of that and makes it as easy as possible to do high-level commands for your objects and your characters that you're controlling. So yeah, a bit of clarity on that, but I think sounds like there's an issue board item in the making here. Next question from Fearless Wee. Will POM come to the terrain system? Oh, I know what you mean. It'd be great if we could do parallax occlusion mapping for the entire terrain. It means when you look down and there's like a pebble in the texture, that pebble will pop out. It'll look like geometry. The problem is if you just apply POM willy-nilly, which we could do, it'd do POM for everything, the entire terrain, all the way off to that mountain in the distance, and your performance would tank. So the question is it a good idea? Yes. Are we going to do it? It depends if we can find a way to do it performantly. If we can sort of split the terrain render up, so the stuff you see right near you, where you would appreciate POM, parallax occlusion mapping, and then it sort of merges into the non-POM, where you don't really appreciate perspective occlusion mapping at a certain distance, that will be the solution. And I'm pretty sure that's what a lot of modern games actually do. But splitting up that renderer, so now you're basically rendering something that's high detail, then rendering something that's regular detail, then blending the two, that's going to be a performance hit. And we're in the business now of making performance faster, so we can do VR. And a feature like that would go in the opposite direction and give the computer more to do in slow performance. But I do like the idea, if there's a way we can do it, it could even be that the latest version of Wicked Engine already does it and has already solved that very performance problem. If that's the case, yeah, we'll just switch it on and you get the benefit. Okay, this is a question from Dadgood. Will VR support Quest and Pico platforms later on? No, not on our roadmap. Obviously Quest and Quest 2 and the Pico version 4, and I think Pico version 3 as well, support streaming from a desktop. So you'd run it as a desktop VR title, and it streams it out to the standalone headset, as if you was tethered and if you were using a proper desktop VR. I certainly know that Quest and Quest 2 and Pico 4 does it, and that is supported because that's just part of the OpenXR offering. But if the question is, will we have native support for running a GameGuru Max game standalone on a Pico without any PC connected to it, then no, because we'd have to rewrite GameGuru Max to run on Android. We're really not in a position to do that right now. Okay, looking down the question. Whoa, is it true? Have we answered all the questions? Because there's no more question marks. Splificate. Sorry if I got that name wrong. Missed my question, smiley, or upside down face. So, do you want to repost your question? It looks like we do have no more minutes, but I'm happy to answer it because we did get to the end of this live chat, which is great. Is there any way I can just search that name and then go back up and get it a clue really quick? Okay, that's SpiderTech. SpiderTech, did you get your question answered? The big issue I have with GameGuru is that I would like to use my own characters, but I do not see any easy way to import rigged FBX. Yeah, let's see you find it in the Mixamo, and you've got some nice characters that you've imported, rigged them, animated them, and you want them in. Use GLTF version 2 instead of FBX. It's a better import method, and you might get more success coming in that way. Not exactly the entire pipeline, but check that out. Okay, looks like we've got some questions. I know I'm stretching this out, but I did say it was an extended Q&A. Here it is, found the question. Will custom textures require certain resolutions and file extensions? See previous answer. I mean, maybe that's why it wasn't reiterated. But as I've mentioned before, file extensions is DDS. And inside that, the texture format is split into various kinds of compression modes. And we're using BC7 for the albedo of the terrain texture, BC5 for the normal map, and BC1 for the single channel surface stuffs. And in terms of resolution sizes, my recommendation is start at 2K by 2K. That gives you the kind of pixel to pixel resolution on most monitors, where it looks nice and quality. If you drop to 1K, your textures start to look a bit blurry. 2K is about minimum, and 4K future-proofs yourself. So if I was recommending what you're going to create from now on, do 4K, and then compress that down to BC7 for your terrain albedo, and then obviously that will save out as DDS because that's how we store BC7 file formats. So hopefully that was the question you was referring to. Just scroll to the bottom. I can hear you. Well, that's great because I've just been talking for 46 minutes. Okay, any more questions whilst I'm in the mood? No more questions. Okay, I'm drawing a line. We answered every single question that was asked and they were answered, which is great. We've never done that before, or at least there's only a handful of time in 116 broadcasts where we managed to do that. So thank you everyone for your questions. I hope you enjoyed all the stuff I was talking about today. I'm looking forward to giving you proper cool demos next week once we get through all this wicked merge and all this boring code that no one's interested in. You just want to see something nice and fast and cool, and hopefully I'll be able to show you that next week. So until next Wednesday, which will be 7 PM BST whilst we're still in October, thanks very much for your kind attention and your questions, and I'll speak to you all next week. So until then, goodbye.